Do you ever want to dive deeper into the Bible, but you just don't know where to begin, or struggle to feel like you even have the time? When you read the Bible, do you get frustrated because you know there's so much more in there? You just have no clue how to get it out? Or maybe you want to know the Bible better, and you're looking for any resource to help. Then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the Context and Color of the Bible. We're sisters. I'm Veronica.
I'm Erika.
And we love to study the Bible, and we love to help others understand it better. When it comes to our own study of Scripture, we have found that in bringing back the context of Scripture, it adds so much to our understanding. It actually adds color to the black and white pages of the text. All right, so Erika, we are diving into this book of Judges. This week, we're actually going to open up the book.
Right.
And get into chapter 1. And what you said last week was ideally it would be great if people can read the chapter before we start the podcast, because we're not going to read the chapter because we're trying to use our time wisely. And so you need to be familiar with what's going on. But even if you haven't read it, it's okay. But if you have time, pause right now, go read, come back, or just read afterwards. Does that sound good?
Or we have a friend who sent us a picture. She listens with her son and they color together. Mm-hmm. So
he was critiquing I think he's 5. I'm critiquing what we said.
So if you need to, go get a coloring page.
Yes.
We should create a coloring page for the book of Judges. That would be.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
That would end not well.
Yes.
All right. But with that, that is a good point of just a quick reminder of, as we're reading Judges, it's supposed to not sit well.
Yes.
It's supposed to hit you and go, oh. And truthfully, Samson has always kind of done that. It's like he's supposed to be, because in my mind, if you're picked by God to be a leader, you should be godly. And Samson seems to have issues with women.
To put it mildly.
Issue.
You may not want to listen to Judges with your children.
That is true.
Or without listening first.
Right. To know what's coming up.
Right.
But Judges is supposed to hit you and not feel good. You're supposed to, in a way, be repulsed and horrified.
Yes.
By what you're reading.
And we're going to get into why partially that is. There's the story reason, what he's writing, but also how he's telling his story. Both of those set you off a little bit.
So I guess truthfully, sorry to interrupt, but when we get to the end of Judges, we might tell you at the beginning, not a good one to listen with your children around.
We should have a parent disclaimer at the end.
But right now, this week, we're fine.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Go for it, Air.
All right. So again, Judges 1 opens up with the death of Joshua. We started that last week. And there's no leader to replace him. Now, usually, Veronica, and we talked about this briefly last week, we've always heard that's a bad thing. Moses trained up Joshua. Joshua is supposed to train up his replacement, successor, and he doesn't. And this is bad, and this is why Israel sins. But a couple of the commentaries went, well, maybe it was okay, because maybe Israel was supposed to learn how to follow God without a human leader. Right away, we see the tribes are able to talk to God and get answers, and they probably go through the priest. So probably the de facto leader is the high priest at this point. But maybe a human leader isn't necessary. I don't know. I go back and forth. We talked about this a little bit before the podcast. I feel like the Bible gives you on the one hand, but on the other hand.
Because I feel like you regularly get the thought of it's wrong to ask for a king. They shouldn't have asked for a king. And God kind of goes, okay, when you get the king, it's not going to go well for you. So you feel like that was bad. But you brought up the point of in Deuteronomy, God lays out rules for the king. So
you kind of get both.
Yeah.
And one of the things Judges seems to imply is because there's no king, everyone is doing what's right in their own eyes. And that sets you up for Samuel, where you start to go, okay, we meet this king that we've been waiting for. So I feel like it's a bit of both.
Tension.
And we're just going to have to live in the tension. All right. Chapter 1 is the political intro. This, along with chapter 2, sets the tone for the rest of the book. And right away, things start off really well. Israel is united. Who will go up for us. They're a nation, sort of. They are talking to God. They're obeying the Lord. And Judah goes up first. They win their land, which includes Jerusalem. A little bit of foreshadowing right there. And it's a huge success. And they actually defeat a king who has 10,000 men with him. This is a massive army. And this king admits his defeat is just. If you read through the chapter, you'll see he goes, serves me right. That what happened to me. But we start to get just a hint that maybe things aren't exactly where they should be, because this Canaanite king says, Israel does to me what I've done to others. Now, on the one hand, in the ancient Near East, this would be looked at as true justice, tit for tat, eye for eye. But at the same time, is that how Israel is supposed to treat their enemies? Now, death, yes, but they kind of torture him and then put him to death.
Oh.
Is that how Israel is supposed to handle it? Or are they starting to act like the Canaanites? If in Joshua you get this strong, triumphant melody of victory, success, right here in Judges, we're getting this little hint of a minor key. Just all of a sudden, something just seems a little off. Then, but we also at this point are introduced to Othniel, who will end up being our first judge. He's Caleb's nephew. Caleb from Joshua, from Moses' day. Amazing man. Yes, one of the 12 spies. And we meet Othniel's wife. This is the first woman we're introduced to in the book. And she's resourceful, respectful. She's bold. She takes initiative twice. She's a strong Israelite woman who seeks to build up her household. Now, the Negev, if you've got a picture of Israel, a map in your head, even if you don't, the Negev is in the south.
Okay.
And when it comes to water in the land of Israel, the farther north you are, the more water you get. The higher up in elevation you are, the more rain you get.
Okay, so as you go north, you get more elevation too.
Yes,
Okay.
but even some places in south, like Jerusalem or this around Jerusalem, there's higher elevation. But the Negev is both in the south and it's lower elevation.
Okay.
So water's very precious. And so she takes the initiative to make sure her family has what it needs to not only survive, but thrive. So you get Othniel, who becomes a hero, this amazing woman who marries a hero. You've got Caleb mentioned. Like, this is a great family, bold, strong, faithful. Everybody's good. This is the way you want it to be. And then we flip a little bit. And we learn that Benjamin, who has now taken over the city of Jerusalem, isn't able to keep it. And in fact, they're living side by side with Canaanites. Well, that's not good. God said, wipe them out. But then we get to the tribe of Joseph, and they go up next. And they win most, but not all, their land. And they don't defeat a king. They get helped by a spy.
Oh.
Now, we're supposed to immediately contrast with Rahab.
Because it brings up Rahab, or that's just supposed to be
That's
in,
in the
memories?
back of your minds.
Okay.
Because Rahab helped the spies for Jericho.
Right.
But because you want to compare and see the differences.
Oh, okay.
Rahab helped of her own volition. She wasn't a spy. She recognized the God of Israel is real. He's given you this city for the preservation of my family. I will help you and I'll hide you. And then that's all she does. And she lets them go free. And so her reward for her faithfulness is she gets to enter into Israel. She becomes an Israelite and she's in the lineage of Jesus. This guy's different. He's a traitor. He gets paid to basically betray his city, and he walks away. He doesn't join Israel. He remains a Canaanite, and he builds a Canaanite city in the land. So there's really nothing positive. He just replaces the one they destroyed.
Okay.
Probably with the money they gave him.
And the purpose of that was?
Yeah, exactly. And it goes downhill from there. Each tribe gets less and less land as you read through this first chapter. So instead of cleaning out the land of the sin and the wickedness, they allow the Canaanites to live alongside them. And sure enough, as we read, they will ensnare Israel in sin. So you start with Judah, that wipes out the Canaanites. Benjamin allows the Canaanites to live among them. Then you get Manasseh, Ephraim, Zebulun. They still have Canaanites living among them, but at least Zebulun does put them to forced labor. But then it flips with Asher and Naphtali. And it says, Asher and Naphtali, they live among the Canaanites. So now the Canaanites have the upper hand, and the Canaanites allow them to live on the land. Now, yes, Naphtali does get some of theirs into forced labor as well, but you still get the feeling there's more Canaanites than Israelites in this area. And it ends with the tribe of Dan, who not only does not remove the Canaanites, but they can't even claim a part of their land. They get pushed off the land God gave them, and they hide in the hills. And at the end of Judges, what we'll read is they go north. They completely leave their inheritance and go north. Rather than fight for it, they just give up. But we won't learn that till the end, so we're just going to put a little check mark by Dan. They'll come up again. So as you read through, what you'll notice is we start in the south, we move north. Not every tribe is mentioned. This is not like an in-depth.
Oh.
This is just an overview. So you can just assume the other tribes are fitting in, not gaining all their land either.
So in a way, I feel like we need a map to be watching. And as you said, each tribe takes less of their land. It doesn't specifically say that, though.
You put it
have
together.
Okay. You have to know what they were allotted back in Joshua, and then actually have a map and know the land to see they didn't take their full allotment.
Right.
Okay. But we're just helping you out.
Yes.
Because not all of us have the time. That's the point. We're here to help you.
Right.
To add those connections because we don't all have a map. We don't understand all those cities. It would be great to get familiar with Jerusalem, the Negev, Shiloh.
The basics.
The big cities
south.
you hear.
Yeah. Some of those would be helpful. Sea of Galilee.
But that's one thing it's not going to say specifically here they took less land. Erika's telling you that.
Right.
Based on her research.
Right. Right. All right. As this intro progresses, it begins to give us that downward spiral. So as the astute readers that we are, we're beginning to see that downward spiral. Things are starting out great, but they're not ending well. It's setting the tone for the rest of the book. The excitement, the enthusiasm, the victories we saw in Joshua, that's not here. Now, Veronica, I want to hit on a little bit of a harder topic, the violence. Because if you've read through Joshua, you've already encountered violence, and you're going to see more violence in the book of Judges. But I love the way the author, well, I shouldn't say love, I appreciate the way the author handles the violence. And we'll talk about that as we get into those sections. A lot of people struggle with the idea, why does God have Israel kill everyone? Why mass destruction? If God's desire for the nations from the beginning is to reveal himself through Israel and draw those nations back into relationship with him to the worship of the one true God, why doesn't he start that now with the Canaanites? My answer is there are some nations that are so evil, so anti-God, that his just judgment is destruction. The Canaanites are wicked, and they are wicked people who reside on holy land. And I'm going to give an example, and I can't remember, I believe it was the Aztecs.
Okay.
Now, the Aztecs are in South America, and we have to read a book for class, the Incas, the Aztecs, and the Mayans. And so I can't remember, I think it was the Aztecs, but it might have been one of the other two, but I don't think so, because the Aztecs were bloodthirsty. The Aztecs believed that for rain to come each year, they had to sacrifice kids. But the problem is, well, not only that, that would be a problem. That's a problem in and of itself. But the problem also, to me, what makes it even worse, though, is that they believed the more tears the child cried as they were being put to death, the more rain they would get.
That's horrible.
So I'm just going to let you imagine what type of death they would inflict on these poor children. And I think we would all be horrified if God did not justly deal with that. And I mean, obviously it's not happening today. This was hundreds of years ago. But that is an evil practice that needed to be judged and stopped. So that's just an example of how wicked people can get. The Canaanites were wicked. They were evil. They had given themselves over to such demonic influence. There was nothing redemptive about their culture. It needed to be destroyed. On top of that, these evil people, wicked people are now living on land that God has claimed for his own. And I don't care whether you think it's PC or not. He's God. He had every right to do with this land what he will. And now he wants to use this land to bless the nations. Israel was to take this land and turn it into a place where the worship of the one true God could flourish, unhindered, unchallenged. Israel was to turn this land into a bit of heaven on earth and show the nations what God was like. So it needed to be purged. It needed to be cleansed. And Israel was to be the agent of God's justice and cleansing. God wants the land of Israel to be a shining light that explodes in the darkness and reveals him powerfully. I mean, we, especially in the West, do not understand how dark this world has been throughout history. Because in the West, our culture has been so founded on biblical principles and this Roman idea of justice that we don't know what it's like to grow up in a culture that doesn't have that. I read an article years ago, and it took that phrase, women and children first. You know, if you're in a situation, only so many people can survive.
Right. About going down. Lifeboats.
Yes. That's not worldwide.
Oh.
I didn't know that. There are other cultures out there that would say, no, everyone for themselves. The strong survive, the weak get killed. Stinks to be you. That's a Western idea, women and children first, because that's a biblical idea. You help the weaker. You help the people that can't help themselves. So that's just one little example. So you've got a world out there that has no biblical influence, no Torah, no knowledge of God, and it's dark. It is so dark. And Israel, as they live obediently, is going to be this explosive, shining light that is going to be so different. On top of that, because of where Israel's placed, it's called a land bridge. We talked about this last week, Egypt to the south, Assyria and Babylon to the north. And the only way really to get between the two, back and forth between these two big nations, is to go through Israel. This is a major highway in the ancient world. People are constantly traveling up and down through Israel. So imagine you're from Assyria and you live every man for himself. If I can take advantage, I don't care. And you go through this nation where the weaker people are being taken care of, where the oppressed there's no oppression. Everybody has a place. Everybody's being dealt with justice, with equality, with fairness. It's this amazing place. And you're like, wow. And the land itself is being blessed. And you're like, this is amazing. Why are you living like this? And Israel's like, let me tell you about my God. That's why I live like this. And you're going to take that back home. And you're going to talk to your neighbors, your family, like, I've got to tell you what I saw on my journey. So the knowledge of God could explode over the earth.
Well, and even not just the people and how they treat each other, but in Leviticus, I mean, the land is very much tied into the blessings and the cursing. And that was one thing that struck me as we studied Leviticus, is how much the land is going to reap the benefits. So if you think, okay, the people are amazing, you should see the crops they grow. You should see everything about this of just even, I just picture a fertile, productive land as well as the people.
Yeah, a fertile, productive land and people.
Yes,
like it would be amazing. It would be amazing. That was God's design. Israel decides to wallow in the filth. and they let some of the garbage remain. And so in God's amazing wisdom, he chooses to use the garbage to purify Israel. And still at the same time, he's giving the nations a glimpse of what he's like. He does not waste anything, but it's a lot harder than what he wanted. One commentary put it this way: instead of reshaping the world after the image of the Lord's will, they, Israel, live in and with the world. Mm-hmm. And before long, they have taken on the characteristics of the world. Instead of making this the land of the people of God, they become like the people of the land. Mm-hmm. So politically now in chapter 1, we are seeing this downhill spiral. And I think, Veronica, one lesson that I took away from this book was read carefully. Mm. There's a lot that doesn't make sense to us. We are so far removed from the Bible when it was originally written. The language is different. The culture is different. The land, the map is very different. So if you're unsure why it's in there, why? Because when you read chapter 2 after this, you'll find out it says the exact same thing. Joshua's dead. Mm-hmm. Like, wait, why is it in here twice? We're going to cover that a little bit next week. Read carefully. God does not waste ink, the rabbis say. So if it's in there, it is in there for a reason and a purpose. Chapters 1 and 2 both are trying to give us a picture of Israel from two different perspectives. We need both chapters to inform us how to read the book. And already at the end of chapter 1, we're getting this idea. Don't expect happy stories. This is not a fairy tale. This turns into a nightmare. And we need to be prepared for that. Mm-hmm.
So read with caution.
Yeah. It's Judges.
Right.
It has a purpose.
Right. And is the Hebrew name Judges?
No. Is it Shoftim? Judges?
I mean, is it essentially just Judges in Hebrew?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Because sometimes I know I'm studying Numbers right now, and actually it has a different name.
It does.
In the Torah than we have in our English Bibles.
Yeah, it's Shoftim in Hebrew.
Okay. Just a random.
Yeah, random question you threw at me.
Yes, I did. But what I like is we're setting the stage. I feel like chapters 1 and 2 are definitely the introduction, set the stage. Now you know, you're prepared when you read. And I think so many times we get that. When you read a story or you start a movie and we get like trigger warnings or whatever, before you start this, you need to know. Or I've watched YouTube channels and they're like, hey, I'm going to talk about this. If you don't want to know about this, if it's going to bother you, skip ahead so many seconds, minutes. And so Judges is kind of going, we're going to get into the yuckiness, so you need to know it ahead of time. What good Bible students don't do is skip it because we don't like it. And like Erika said last week, instead we don't skip it. We go, I need to understand why this is here. Why is this recorded? What's the lesson? How does this fit in the whole narrative of where Israel is, what's going on, and what can I learn for myself today? And ultimately, what can we learn from God? Because in a way, when you said it last week, it was like, okay, they end so poorly. It's almost like I thought of Noah and God going, okay, we're done. We're starting over for a third time.
Right.
Let's see if you can figure it out. But that's not what he does.
Right.
So we have a gracious, compassionate God.
And that shines so brightly in this book.
Okay, so there's
definitely hope, but it lies in one place.
Okay, in God alone.
God alone.
Which is sometimes what we need to know and be reminded.
Yeah.
So don't forget, you can join us on social media. You can see behind the scenes. You can interact, ask your questions, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to hear from you. And as always, we'll talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.